It's time to cap the card for Pegasus World Cup Day on NYRA Bets. Let's go. Hi, everyone. Matthew DeSantis here with NYRA Bets, and it is that time to cap the entire 13-race card on Pegasus World Cup Day taking place on Saturday at Gulfstream Park. Before we get to running through all 13 races on the day, including the 3 signature Pegasus World Cup races, I want to remind you to press that like button here on this video and subscribe to NYRA Bets YouTube today. Subscribing is completely free of cost, just notifies you when new videos drop on the channel. And we got a lot dropping, whether it's previews at Oaklawn, Gulfstream Park, weekly programming, Kentucky Oaks, Kentucky Derby previews, all sorts of good stuff here. So we're your one-stop shop for everything horse racing and handicapping. So keep it right here on NYRA Bets. All right, well, listen, also drop in the comments below who you like. Who are your best bets on Pegasus World Cup Day? Would love to get your thoughts on this card as well. I'm going to share you mine. And if this is your first time tuning in to capping the card, the premise is very straightforward. I'm going to go through race 1 through 13. I'm going to give you my top pick. I'm going to give you my value play in every single race. That value play sometimes is a long shot that I think has a really good chance at winning and upsetting the field. Other times, it's a horse that might be at long odds, might not be a win contender, but might be a horse to run underneath, a horse to include in exactas, trifectas, value understood in a vertical sense, maybe not a horizontal sense in terms of that pick 5, pick 6, pick 4, pick 3, daily double type of a wager. So listen, let's get going because we got 13 races to get through. And we start off with a pair of maiden special weight races on the card. The first one on the turf, going a mile for 3-year-olds. And it should be noted, there's been a lot of rain in South Florida. There's been a lot of weather in Florida, quite frankly, whether it's the snow up in the Panhandle or whether it is the rain in Tampa, Gulfstream Park. The good news is Friday looks to be clearing up. Saturday looks to be a nice day. So the turf, they've not been running on turf at all during this time. So the turf course should be, I don't want to speculate to say it's going to be firm, but probably good at worst. So I'd expect the turf course to be running fairly, though, nevertheless. So listen, this is a fun turf race, though. Some really intriguing first-timers. Brad Cox has a horse, Cunin, from Omaha Beach out of an Arch mare. Good pedigree, nice workouts. Florent drew a board. You also have another horse, I think, who's probably your second most likely winner is Bulldoze, the 4-1 choice for Todd Pletcher with Irad Ortiz Jr. board. Trust me, you're going to hear that name a lot today. I think Irad's going to have a big day. That one, sired by Nyquist, out of a stakes-winning turf dam, Riley's Choice. I think there's a lot to like there, though the dam has only produced one other foal, and the foal won in a maiden claimer on dirt, never really popped on turf at all. So there are some questions there in terms of whether this horse is going to fire first time out. The horse that I ultimately ended up going to, admittedly, is going to have to work out a trip, and that's the other Chad Brown horse, which is 6-1, up for an Oscar for Tyler Gaffleone on the mount. And Gaffleone is also going to be a name you hear a bunch. I think he's got a bunch of live runners today, and then he's going to be on a bunch of really solid mounts. This horse, admittedly, has to work out a trip from the outside post. No two ways about it. Now, if you look at it at first glance, you go, Matthew, the dam is 0 for 3 with first out winners. You're absolutely right. That's true. But I would say there's a couple of addendums that need to be added to this. One, the full sibling, Betty Davis, won first time on synthetic at Turfway Park. The horse started on dirt and then moved forward when they placed the horse on the synthetic. So trying to change that surface a little bit closer to turf. Oscar performances run well on any surface, but I think they tend to do better on turf and synth than they do on dirt. The other one was a pure turf horse, ran, 5-time winner, Fall Moon. And then the other full sibling, Active Fool, also sired by Oscar Performance, obviously, was a stakes winning turf router. Won the Hawthorne Derby back 2 years ago in 2023. That was the first time that horse ran on turf. So there is more kind of first out ability there than I think it might at first appear. The works have been solid, but not spectacular. And again, Brown has been slow to start off this championship meet at Gulfstream Park, which he usually is. If you remember a couple of years ago, he started, I think, 1 for 34. This year, he's actually 2 for 33. So he's kind of right on par. Here's the thing, though. He is 18 for 33 hitting the board. His horses are running well. They're just not getting across the wire first. I think some of that starts to reverse on Pegasus World Cup day. I think this is usually the day you start to see the worm turn for a barn like Chad Brown, because he suddenly is starting to bring some of his horses back, debut some of these horses that I think have really promising futures. So that's going to be my top pick at 6-1. Where am I going for a value play? I'm going to the other Todd Pletcher horse. Pletcher's got a bunch of really good horses, I think, running today. This one has Luis Saez up on the mount, sired by War of Wills, but the dam is what really impresses me. 2 raced foals and 2 winners out of those, including one in debut, who was, oh, by the way, a little horse we like to call Nutella Fella, who, if you remember, won the Grade 1 hopeful for trainer Gary Contessa 2 years ago up at Saratoga. So that's a horse that I think is, obviously showed a lot of first out precocity. Now we're trying this one on the turf, but listen, sired by War of Will. That if there's one thing War of Will does well, it's really sire turf routers. So I expect this horse to look pretty good. Saez, always a reliable jockey, 17% down there for the meet. Pletcher, always, I think, a dangerous jockey this time of year, in particular on a big day like today. So listen, it's a spready type of a race. I'd be hard-pressed to leave a horse like Cunin or Bulldoze off my early pick 5 tickets, but I do think you might be able to catch a price as long as some of these horses breaking towards the outside can work out a little bit of a trip. Well, let's move to race number 2 on the card, which is another $94,000 maiden special weight for 3-year-olds. This one's going 7 furlongs on the dirt, and there is a potential monster in this race, and that is the number 5 Disruptor. The $1.15 million son of Gunrunner was purchased as a yearling for that price. Hello. You don't see that every day of the week. And this one has been firing off some very impressive works for Pletcher, particularly that 47 flat gate work. That was a bullet, first of 27. Now, my colleague Acacia Clement pointed something out, which when you see back-to-back gate works, a lot of times it indicates maybe they didn't see the speed they wanted out of that first time. She said the second time Irad really hustled this horse out of the gate, and she thinks it's going to be one of those things where this horse, it's really going to come down to the break. And if this horse can break effectively, there's a load of talent, though, I think there. And you rarely see Pletcher having his horses firing off a number of bullets leading up to debut. And I just think this one with Irad Ortiz Jr. aboard, who, by the way, has just been absolutely lights out at Gulfstream Park and has been an absolutely plus jockey in terms of just flat betting Ortiz Jr. I believe you'd be up 33% in terms of your ROI for the championship meet if you just flat bet Irad Ortiz Jr. So he's obviously an amazing rider, very good with first-time runners. This one's got the pedigree for first out success with Gunrunner. And 7-5, it's a short price, but this could be a horse that really puts on a little bit of a display. Now, in terms of a value play, I wanted to dig a little deeper for a value play, and that is the number 9, Pitkin. Now, why do I like this horse? Well, you get the far outside post, which it can be a little bit of a best of both worlds, or, kind of good side, bad side. Good news is you stay out of trouble a lot of times on the far outside. You're not bumping in between horses. That can happen in debut. The bad news is a lot of times horses have a tendency to break out towards open ground. And so there's a possibility the horse will break out into the right and give up a lot of ground as a result of that, and kind of have to get steered back in by jockey Joe Bravo for trainer Ian Wilkes. But this one's got some nice pedigree. And in particular, this one is the half sibling to Walkathon. Now, Walkathon is a grade 3 winning turf router and was sired by Twirling Candy. Obviously, you get a lot more of that turf influence with Twirling Candy. This one's sired by Nyquist. Listen, Nyquist can produce some turf runners, but really it's more of a dirt sire, and that's what he does best. I think the dirt influence here is going to be effective. This one has had some nice works. I like seeing that minute and 2 5 furlong work. I see a couple of other 5 furlong works there. There's a couple of nice gate works, particularly the one back on New Year's Day, 3rd of 23, 48 flat. So I think there's a lot to like there. I'll also give a little shout out to the number 8 Santal for Jose D'Angelo, a trainer I have a lot of respect for, and owner Tammy Bobo, who owned my favorite horse, Simplification, many years ago. This one's sired by McKinsey. And, it's interesting to see. I just think that's when a 10-1 could also outrun the odds a little bit. And like I said, if you're going to go with a rather short top choice in Disruptor, at least back it up with a big price like Pitkin underneath, maybe in your exactas and trifectas. Let's move to some non-maiden races, and there's a bunch of those on the card, obviously, the rest of the way. And that is going to be race number 3, which is a $62,000 optional claimer for 4-year-olds and up, going a mile on the turf. And honestly, the big horse in this race is the number 2, Atone, the former winner of the Pegasus World Cup Turf Invitational back in 2023. That seems like ages ago. Now this horse is coming back from a lengthy layoff, having last run in a $500,000 handicap at Kentucky Downs. And this one has not won since that Pegasus World Cup Turf Invitational. Now is in for the 62.5 tag for trainer Mike Maker. It's a hard pass for me. Really going to be hard to take price on that one. Where am I going to go as a result? Well, the number 6 Full Nelson, I think, makes a little bit of sense for Jose D'Angelo. Again, Irad Ortiz Jr. up on the mount. I think he's going to have a big day. This one's been running against Stakes Company and has been running competitively against Stakes Company and has been, like I said, won the Columbia back at Tampa Bay Downs in March of last year, and then is stakes placed in Tell of the Cat, as well as last time out in the Tropical Park Derby. And so, at Gulfstream Park, he's finished right behind Cugino that day. This horse has been running against nice competition, whether it's Neat, whether it's Cugino, whether it is Carson's Run, Donegal Momentum. There's nice horses there that this one's been running against. And I think D'Angelo just does get this horse spotted in the right place. The workouts have been very nice leading up to this race, particularly the 48 flat work leading up to this one on January 18th. 9-2 is a relatively short price, but I think this horse has shown the ability to sit a little closer to the pace at times. And I'm hoping that that's what Ortiz Jr. does. I think he is best when he is tracking the pace, not necessarily a deep closer, although the last couple of times out, that horse seems to have gotten a little bit further behind. He's also had a little bit of tough trips, was checked badly 2 back, and was really hung 6 wide last time out. So you're getting a little bit of a jockey upgrade to Ortiz Jr. now this time out. I think at 9-2, this one presents at least decent value to beat the favorite. In terms of a little bit of a price play in this one, I'm interested in the number 1 Can Group. This one is another one that's exiting a lot of graded stakes competition. Stakes competition actually finished 7th in that race last time out, where Full Nelson finished 2nd. But this is also a horse second back from about a 6-month layoff. And you would expect this horse to be running a little bit of a better effort, getting Lasix for the first time, actually. We should mention Full Nelson, the only other time this horse ever ran on Lasix, won. So that's a little bit of a good sign as well. But Can Group getting Lasix for the first time, Johnny V aboard, the inside rail. Listen, this horse is a little bit of a deep closer, but I still think with the Lasix, the inside rail, Johnny V up, I think this horse could maybe get a little bit more mid-pack place, let's just say, in the early going. I like the drop down in class, but they're not putting him in for the tag for trainer Mark Casse. I just think a 10-1, this horse getting a little bit of class relief and could continue to make a step forward. It's notable. The horse ran a career best Beyer speed figure last time out, despite the 7th place effort, and was making up significant ground late. So this horse was making up ground in that race and was well back and in last place and really rallied to only be beaten by 2 lengths. So there is some talent there. Second back, getting Lasix, Johnny V aboard, inside trip, going to save the ground. I think there's some things to like at 10-1 for Can Group. Well, let's go to race number 4, and let's go to Matthew's favorite surface, which is the Tapeta. I do love the Tapeta. I don't know if it's my favorite surface. There's only 3 to choose from, but I do love it. And it's a $100,000 handicap for 4-year-old fillies and mares going 1 mile and 70 yards. And this one, this is a tough race. Ultimately, though, I landed on the favorite. And I usually don't like to do that when it's a tough race. I usually like to try to find an alternative. It was hard for me to do that, though. Tuta La Vida, who is the second choice at 4-1 for Ignacio Correas IV, ran well last time out at Gulfstream Park, but also ran against $25,000 optional claiming company and on the turf. Now we're trying the synthetic, which the horse admittedly has been training on, but I still have some reservations there. This horse hasn't won in quite a while, since back in 2023. So this horse is 1 for 12 career. So it was hard for me to get too excited about that one. Sand and Sea, another horse that I think is interesting, who's probably going to be up on the front end for trainer Riley Mott with Junior aboard, coming off a win in a very comparable race, going 1 mile and 1/8 and as a $100,000 handicap. But like I said, Dana's Beauty for me ended up being the top pick for trainer Mike Maker. This one also coming off a victory last time out in a synthetic stakes race at Turfway Park, but has never run at Gulfstream Park, but has run very, very well over the synthetic, 7 career wins over that surface, and is 17 for 26 hitting the board on synthetic in this horse's career. It's also very good on the turf, won a stakes race, 3 back at Remington Park over the turf. So very capable in both spots, also has outstanding speed. I think Size is going to be aggressive with this one and just go from the gate. I think this horse might be a little naturally faster than a horse like Sand and Sea. And so I think Size is going to try to get the jump over Junior Alvarado in this race and just try to get this horse out on the front end. The horse had shown the ability to rate a little bit, did that 3-back in that Turf Stakes victory. So doesn't need to get to the lead. But outside of those two, I don't think there's going to be a lot of pace pressure. So should be able to set relatively soft fractions. I don't see this pace coming apart. Gulfstream Park can be a little bit of a speed favoring turf course depending on how it's playing on Saturday with all the rain that it's taken this past week. Now, in terms of a value play, and I'm throwing this one downfield a little bit, but it is the number 4 Neon Icon. And this is an interesting horse to me for a couple of reasons. One, for trainer Rusty Arnold. Rusty knows Gulfstream Park, and he knows the synthetic surface. And this one is sired by Arrogate. And Arrogate has always been an effective sire, particularly in synthetic routes, 15% winners. So more than an adequate percentage there. And this is, I like this horse. One of the reasons I like this horse is a perfect 3 for 3 with Lasix. Sometimes it's just that simple. Some horses don't run well without Lasix, and this is one of them. That this horse won in debut, won a first level allowance at Churchill Downs, and then promptly got stepped up to the Indiana Oaks, the Alabama, the Seneca Overnight, all off Lasix, and ran poorly in all of them. Then switches back onto Lasix at Keeneland, wins easily, and then switches back off Lasix and finishes 4th by 7 lengths in the Falls City. Admittedly over a muddy track. So maybe there's some excuses there, but the horse handled a bad track and a wet track back at Churchill Downs with a victory. So the bottom line here is this is a horse that likes the Lasix and is trying synthetic for the first time. Rusty hasn't really worked this horse over the synthetic, which is a little bit of a concern, but this horse clearly is feeling pretty well. Has a 47-2 bullet work, comes back January 15th with another 47-2 work. So Neon Icon, a horse that I think is best when this horse is forwardly placed. When she sits that tracking trip, I think that's when she's at her best for jockey Brian Hernandez Jr. I think she gets that trip. She could be a little bit of an upset candidate in this race, not just strictly an underneath play. Neon Icon at a big price. Listen, if she takes that synthetic, could be really dangerous in this particular race. I just really like the Arrogates on synthetic. And like I said, Rusty knows how to train these horses down in South Florida and understands the surface switch and what this horse might be capable of doing. And like I said, I think the biggest thing is the Lasix. Well, let's move to race number 5, and that is the Gulfstream Turf Sprint Stakes. And this is going 5 furlongs on the turf. And listen, anybody who has ever watched the Gulfstream Park Turf Sprint knows these things are over in the blink of an eye. And it is usually speed of the speed. And it is just that simple. And I'm going to go with a horse that I think is speed of the speed, and that's on the far outside, Coppola, for trainer Dale Romans with Tyler Gaffalione aboard. I told you to hear Tyler's name a few times today. This horse is coming off of a win last time out in the Janus. Hadn't won for a little while before that. Actually, last ran on an off-turf race back at Horseshoe Indianapolis, I should say, but has a lot of stakes victories, 4 wins at this 5 furlong distance, 3 wins on the turf at Gulfstream Park. Most notably, if you actually look, the last 3 times this horse ran at Gulfstream Park, all victories. So this horse doesn't mind the turf at Gulfstream Park. Also notice last time out, this horse broke on the far outside, 11th of 11, got the win. So I'm not too worried about that outside post position just because this horse has such outstanding early speed. We'll be able to cross and clear a lot of the field. The big thing here is I am playing against No Balls, who is running in this race for Larry Ravelli, coming out of the Kennedy Road victory last time out at Woodbine. The reason I'm playing against this horse is I just don't know what version of No Balls to expect because first of all, he got the win last time with Lasix. That said, the horse has won plenty without Lasix, but I think it's notable. More importantly, this horse shipped over to Asia for a race, was scratched from that race, and shipped all the way back. Has only had one workout leading up to this race, really, on January 17th at Turfway Park. The works have just been very intermittent, and I'm just a little worried what version of No Balls we're necessarily going to see in this race. So I'm going to play against this $1.6 million winner of a personal favorite. I think everybody loves No Balls, but ultimately playing against this one with Coppola as my top pick. Now, from a value play standpoint, like another horse with Johnny V, and that's right. And this is a horse for trainer Brad Cox. This horse previously trained by Brittany Russell. Cox stepped this horse up to run in the Janus, lost to Coppola, as well as Reef Runner, who's in this race. Always like that horse, Reef Runner. That horse always runs well at whatever price he's at. But I think that's right as an interesting one because the blinkers are coming on. I think that's kind of what you need, this horse to be a little bit of speed to get out there. You get Johnny V on a speed horse up on the front end, that can be dangerous because very few jockeys are better at divvying out fractions on the front end and just having that internal clock than Velasquez. You would imagine this is a horse that will get out there up front and maybe stay on a little bit better. I think the cutback to 5 furlongs is beneficial. Horse hasn't won a Gulfstream Park yet, but it does have plenty of wins at this distance. And again, at 10-1 for a new barn that is always so hot with new entries and new horses entering their farm and barn. I'm going to take a shot with that's right here at 10-1 as a little bit of a value play in this race. But, these turf sprints, you guys know this. In my opinion, these are the toughest races to handicap. You could look at a horse like Mucho del Oro for Doug O'Neill coming east. Do I trust a West Coast turf horse coming east? The horse has been running 6.5 on the downhill. Now we're cutting back to 5 at Gulfstream. I don't know about that. You look at a horse like Johnny Padres, another horse coming west to east. Now for the Jose D'Angelo board and with NYRA board, that's a good horse. But again, has kind of run some 5s, run some 6.5s on the downhill. The problem is that horse doesn't win very often. And then the second part is you get the inside rail going 5 at Gulfstream. That's not necessarily where you want to be if you don't have great speed. And Johnny Padres doesn't have great speed. It's going to have to try to pass them all in all likelihood coming from home. So a lot of things to consider there in that 5th race, but an exciting one nonetheless. We're going to move to the 6th race now, which is another race on the Tapeta, another $100,000 handicap. This one for the boys, 4-year-olds and up, and again going 1 mile and 70 yards. This race is wide open. Your morning line favorite is Jerry the Nipper at 5-1, and I get it. I mean, it'll be fascinating to see where the public money goes in this race. I ultimately landed on exact estimate, and at 8-1 for Chad Brown with Edgar Zayas aboard. This horse made a start last time out in December. That was the first race back in 9 months. Before that, the horse looked amazing doing this sort of $100,000 handicap trip. Ran a 96 and a 98 by her speed figure, finished second by a nose to county final, and then won the next time out over Skyro, who's a very good turf or a very good synthetic horse, I should say, as well as beat Ohana Honor, who's a nice horse also, and showed the ability to rate a little bit in that race. So just a really good horse. Came back from that long layoff, showed the speed, but ultimately faded late. Quite frankly, that's what you would expect first back. Now we're second back. Chad Brown's second back over a 180-day layoff. He doesn't screw around. This is when his horses fire, and they fire at a high rate, 28% over the last year. I think Zayas is known to be an aggressive jockey. Get this horse out up front. Get this horse, either on the lead or right stalking the pace. And I think you're in a pretty dangerous spot here for this one. So I like exact estimate at 8-1. Do you get 8-1? I don't know. I think that's the kind of $64,000 question. And or maybe it's a $100,000 question with this race. But listen, I think it's worth a shot. And it'll be interesting to see where this price goes come post time. In terms of the value play, here's a horse that I don't think is going to take a ton of money just because of the connections of Darian Rodriguez and Leonel Reyes. They're not the biggest connections out there. But this one, finished third to Jerry the Nipper last time out, won a $100,000 handicap in November at Oaklawn Park, basically doing this exact same trip over a horse like Fly the W, who's another nice horse on the synthetic. So this one has the class. The last 2 times out is moving forward. 90-91 buyers would probably need to move forward again a little bit to win this race. But for a $17,000 purchase, sired by Tail of Icati, this is a nice horse. And I think you're going to get 10-1 or higher on this one. And feels like this is a horse they finally figured out what they want to do with it and can come from off the pace, can track the pace a little bit. I just think this horse drawing that 7 post has some decent tactical speed to be able to sit more of a tracking trip, maybe not get caught too wide around both turns. Generally speaking, going 2 turns on the synthetic, you like to be kind of tracking. You don't want to be a deep closer. You also sometimes get a little burned up on the front end, but that tracking trip tends to be the best one. So Possible Amente, the number 7 at 10-1. I think is a little bit interesting for connections that probably are not going to take a ton of money, and you're going to get an honest price on this horse who has shown the ability to win this type of race at this level. And that's the most important thing with this jockey aboard. Well, let's keep the good times rolling and let's go to a turf marathon, which is perhaps my least favorite. Well, I shouldn't say that. Turf marathons just give me a lot of feelings. And we're going to talk about the La Prevoyante, the grade 3, going a mile and a half on the turf. This is one for 4-year-old nut fillies and mares. I'm going to go to a horse I just really like a lot. But first, I want to talk about playing against Charlie Appleby's horse, Beautiful Love. William Buick aboard, Godolphin owned and bred. Charlie Appleby. I mean, hello, 5-2. You might not even get 5-2. Listen, the horse is coming off a huge effort. No two ways about it in the Breeders' Cup Filly Mare Turf. Finished 4th that day behind Moira, Cinderella's Dream, and Dadia. No disrespect there at all. You know, the horse won the Jockey Club Oaks Invitational at Belmont at Aqueduct. Nice looking horse that day. Made up a ton of ground. Late kick. You know, didn't really run that well in the Waya next time out. Didn't really run well in debut in North America. At Saratoga, off of a little bit of a layoff. Now coming back off of another little bit of a layoff. I just don't know. This horse doesn't overwhelm me. The Beyer speed figure from that Breeders' Cup was a career best, and I wonder if that really is the sort of number this horse is going to run consistently, or whether or not this horse regresses back to those kind of high to mid 80 Beyer speed figures. So I'm playing against Appleby in this spot, and I'm using a horse that is really proven and is in a new barn now. You don't see this many times. Going from Brad Cox to Todd Pletcher, going from one big-time barn to another, but chop with Irad Ortiz Jr. aboard. Listen, I'm disappointed that you don't have Luan Machado aboard. Why? Because Machado's nickname is the Axeman. What better jockey to ride a horse named Chop than the Axeman? I'm just saying. The last 2 times Machado ran the horse won. I'm just saying. So, but this one's coming out of a win in the Dowager, going a mile and a half at Keeneland, coming off a little bit of a layoff, but is feeling very good. You look at this horse, has had 4 workouts leading up to this, including a 59 flat bullet work, going 5 furlongs in that 59 seconds. And this horse has just become a really, really cool runner. And it's a horse that has won on the synthetic, has won on the turf, and even ran really well on the dirt, too. Finished second in the Silver Bullet Day as a 3-year-old. So very capable horse on all the surfaces, and was always a very highly regarded horse, a $900,000 sale at one point. And, there's a recent Fasig Tipton sale, and so was purchased by Rapoli Stables, but back into racing by Mike, and being purchased from Brad Cox and those connections. And yeah, it's an exciting horse to have. So 7-2 on this one for me is one that I'm going to I'm going to play chop in this race as my top pick. Now, from a value play standpoint, I'm going to go out a little further outside to the number 8. This starts a string of value plays from the Ignacio Correas, the 4th barn. And I'll kind of talk about each of them in the subsequent races. But one of the reasons I like Ignacio Correas, the 4th, and I think that a lot of times he brings value, is he's not Todd Pletcher. He's not Brad Cox. He's not Chad Brown. He's not Bill Mott. He doesn't necessarily attract as much public money as some of those other trainers do. So a lot of times you get an honest price on his horses. I also think that there is a tendency to devalue the horses coming up from Latin America, from Argentina and Chile, which is what Correas brings up a lot. But we've seen him have success with horses like Mufasa and Dadia. And I just think there's always value to be had with those types of horses. And Bellato's Beach, 20-1 on the morning line. Vinny Chaminade aboard. This horse is coming off a 5th place finish last time out to La Mejana and Forever After All, Marksman Queen, and a bunch of other horses that are in this race. That was also the first effort in 8 months. I'm willing to think that second time out is going to be a little bit better. And it was an educational trip that first time out in the Via Borghese. I just think this horse has a little bit more to offer. The 7-year-old mare won a grade 1 down at Argentina before coming up here, going a mile and 3/8. So I don't think the distance is going to be an issue. And at 20-1, this feels like a horse, yes, maybe more of an underneath play, but one that I think is going to dramatically outrun her odds in this race. So going to take a shot there. Like I said, going to try to beat the Appleby horse. Going to use the Pletcher horse, Chop. And La Mejana, certainly a very hard-knocking horse. Won the Waya, won the Via Borghese last time out. I do wonder whether or not this horse, what sort of trip this horse is going to sit, whether this horse is going to try to close from the back, and which can be a little bit tricky if you're going slow up front in these kind of turf marathons. All right. Well, let's go to the grade 3 Fred Hooper Stakes, going a mile on the dirt. We're going to try to beat Tumbarumba here, who is your morning line favorite, the number 5 horse at 2-1 for trainer Brian Lynch. The blinkers are coming off this horse. This horse likes to finish second a lot. This horse has not won since winning this race last year and has now run 6 races since then and has finished second 5 times. It's hard to take that sort of a horse at a short price. The horse is training well. The horse always runs well. There's no two ways about it. It's coming off a second last time out in the Harlan's Holiday, but coming off a second too, my top choice, Rocket Can, for trainer Bill Mott. Mott should just keep this horse at Gulfstream Park. This is where this horse always seems to run his best. He won the grade 3 Holy Bull last year, or 2 years ago, I should say. He came in second to a Forte in the Fountain of Youth, then comes back and wins the Harlan's Holiday last time out, and really redeems himself from a bad effort going a 1-turn mile at Churchill Downs, but very fractious in the gate that day. Bad trip all around. Junior Alvarado stays aboard, Mott's number 1 guy, and this is a horse, Rocket Can, that I just feel like is slowly getting better. Now as a 5-year-old, and I think you're starting to see the best version of this horse. So excited that Mott pointed this one towards this race, the Fred Hooper, rather than the Pegasus World Cup. But this horse that likes to come from a little off the pace. But I think Junior, as long as he can get this horse sitting mid-pack, we're fine. And in a 1-turn mile, I actually like that setup quite a bit. I think he'll be able to save ground from that number 3 post. So Rocket Can at 5-2 is going to be my top choice in this particular race. Now, in terms of a value play, the number 9, Cape Trafalgar, going to go to the far outside for trainer Safi Joseph Jr. And we got Irad Ortiz Jr. on the mount. By the way, if you hear hammering in the background, it's just my neighbors hammering away bets at Oaklawn Park right now. I kid. They're just hammering the wall. But we could be hammering away bets at Oaklawn Park. Listen, Cape Trafalgar, 8-1 on the morning line. And this is one that finished 4th in that Harlan's Holiday. That said, it was a little bit of a layoff. And this horse just hasn't really strung together consecutive races very often. There's always been kind of fits and starts with this horse. Never long, but just like, it's like 2 months, 3 months in between races. Yes, this horse might be a little bit of, might need Lasix. No two ways about it. But I thought ran at least decently last time out, going a mile on a 16th. I just don't think that horse wants to go that far. I think it was less the Lasix issue and more the distance issue. I think this is a 1-turn horse. Safi's cutting this horse back from a mile and a 16th to a mile. I think the mile, I think that 16th of a mile isn't that big of a deal. I think it's the 1-turn versus 2-turn nature. That's a bigger deal. You get the far outside. The horse picks up Irad Ortiz Jr., or keeps Irad Ortiz Jr. aboard, I should say. And I just think this one at 8-1 presents good value at a horse that might get overlooked a little bit. People might look at the Lasix and go, the horse ran 4th last time, not as good. I think the cut back to the 1-turn mile is going to be key. Maybe you think this horse is just a little bit more of an underneath play, but I think that there's a lot to like there with a horse like Cape Trafalgar at 8-1. And I think that horse presents really good value in this particular race. Let's go to another turf marathon race, and that is the W.L. McKnight Stakes. Grade 3, going a mile and a half on the turf. And this one, listen, you can only fade Charlie Appleby so much in a day. And this is one where I'm going to go to the far outside, which is not something I like to do in these 2-turn turf races. But if there's any jockey in the world that can overcome that post position, it is William Buick, or as I like to call him, Billy Buck. When he's up here in New York. When he's down in Gulfstream Park, he's William Buick. He comes up here to Aqueduct, he's Billy Buck. And it's Charlie Apples. Come on. Those are guys from around the way. But Charlie Appleby, very good trainer, obviously. And this is one that, won the Sycamore back in 2023 at Keeneland, won the Dubai City of Gold over in Maidan, and then really hasn't lived up to the reputation yet. And, finished 3rd in the Elkhorn, 4th in the Louisville, 3rd in the Churleywood, 2nd in the Sycamore again. Has had some issues, though. Always seems to be a little bit of a head case. Was rank in that Elkhorn, had a tough trip with Florent Drew aboard in the Louisville, was off slow the last 2 times out in the Churleywood and the Sycamore. So now you get Buick aboard, though. And that's one thing to point out, which was that Buick hadn't been aboard this horse at any of those races. Well, now Buick's over there. 2-1 is admittedly a short price to take on a horse that has had some issues, but this horse also has been getting better every single start in North America in recent starts. So I'm going to take a shot with Bold Act 2-1. Take a short price. I don't love it, but there's not a lot else I love in this race. I'll be honest. You look at a horse like Anglophile, just hasn't really delivered. Cathkin Peak, best days I think have been somewhere else. Limited liability, a horse that just, yes, I know won the Nashville Gold Cup going 2 1/16 miles, but outside of that, doesn't really win much. And so it's hard for me to kind of find a clear second choice here. And honestly, the next best one is probably Cash Equity, who's even further outside the 12 post in this race. I think you could look a couple places for value. A horse like Rock Emperor is just one that's very close to my heart. Yamato is actually a horse I really like for Mike Maker, but I do wonder if this might be a little up against it here against graded stakes competition. But that's a horse that's made me a lot of money over the years. And ultimately, I went to another Ignacio Creas, the fourth horse, which is Utah Beach, 10-1 with Tyler Gaffleone aboard. I really like this horse when the horse won, broke its maiden, actually, and really like this horse that day. Really like this horse at Keeneland back in April of 2024 as well. And really like that horse that day. I remember that horse being 8-1 on the morning line, got bet down to 5-2 and went off as your favorite. But man, I love that horse that day. And I think it was my long shot of the day. Didn't end up being a long shot, sadly. But, has stepped up to stakes competition since that race. Hasn't really won, but I thought showed a lot of talent in the H. Allen Jerkins last time out. Finished second by a head to Lord Eddard Stark. And really tracked down the lone speed that time, and then just got nabbed late. So I think this one kind of likes the Gulfstream Park turf. I think it has the ability to kind of move forward from that race, can sit more of a tracking trip. I don't know how much speed there's necessarily going to be in this race, but I think Tyler can kind of get this horse over there onto, maybe the 2 path, not really give up too much ground around all 3 turns. But this one, I think, just has a ton of ability and has a really nice closing kick. When he kicks in, I think he's really good. I like the 1.5 miles for this horse. Has won 2 times going this distance. So I'm going to take Utah Beach at 10-1 as a horse that I think has the ability to surprise at a little bit of a price in a race that feels very wide open to me for this particular running. Well, let's get to one of the signature races on the day, which is the Pegasus World Cup Filly and Mare Turf, going 1 1/16 miles on the turf, of course. And this is another wide open race. Really reminds me a lot of that one handicap where Jerry the Nipper was your 5-1 favorite. Rakaya is your favorite at 4-1 for trainer Todd Pletcher, making the first start for the barn, second start in North America, won last time out at Del Mar, now shipping east, stretching out, and is a front-running horse and was able to get kind of a pretty easy lead under Frankie Dettori. Now, Frankie stays aboard. I do wonder if this horse is going to be able to do what it did last time, just because she is facing a tougher caliber of competition. The workouts have been very good for this one leading up to this race for Pletcher, but still, I know she's going to save all the ground from the inside, has good speed to be controlling speed in this race, but I'm going to try to play against her a little bit. Be Your Best is a horse that I took a long look at. But gosh, she's tough to trust. I mean, maybe she's a new horse under Saffie Joseph Jr. She won that Sewanee River, but I would say she got the perfect trip that day. So I'm going to kind of play against her. The word is Fluffy Socks is scratching out of this race. And as a result, I landed on a jockey and a trainer combo I really like, which is Brendan Walsh and Tyler Gaffleone. These two together know how to win. And I like Brendan's horses a lot. And Minushka is an interesting horse to me. Third start in North America now, and is getting used to things. I thought showed some improvement last time out, won in debut with Lasix, but that was also a really wide trip and had a really tough trip that day and still showed a ton of class and a devastating late kick at Keeneland to win. Won over a good turf course, by the way, that day. Might like a little bit of give in the ground, this one. So, won over a good to soft ground in France in debut. Then stepped up into the Mrs. Revere last time out, and again showed a good closing kick, just came up short and finished fourth that day. It'll be interesting to see what Tyler does. This horse draws that number 7 post. I'd imagine Tyler's going to try to get this horse over towards the rail. Whether he takes this horse all the way to the back to do that work, I'd rather him not do that. I'd like for her to sit maybe 7th or 8th in this race. And I think if she sits that type of a trip, particularly now with Fluffy South scratching, she even draws a little closer in. So I think that there's an opportunity for her to sit more of a mid-pack trip and make that patented late kick coming for home. But I think 10-1, you're getting a little bit of a price on a horse that I'll take a shot at. And part of it is like a horse like Papilio, I really, really like. But Papilio's her own worst enemy 90% of the time. She just can't run in a straight line. She always seems to have trouble for Mark Cassie. And I like that horse a lot. Would I be shocked if she won? No, I wouldn't. At an 8-1, she's a good value, but I have a hard time trusting her at that price. Sacred Wish for George Weaver. I like that horse a lot, but again, drawing that 10 post might be a little bit tricky. Good speed, but I just interested to see what sort of trip she works out. So I just think there are some questions about some of the other horses in this field. Now, in terms of the value play, again, we're going to go back to the third time in a row with Ignacio Correa's the fourth horse, and this one's Doña Clota. And Doña Clota is making the first start in North America. But here's the thing. Hasn't really been off that long, actually coming off a grade 1 win last time out in November down in Chile, going 1.5 miles on the turf. So this one has been running recently and has been working out up here, does have a work over the synthetic and the Tapeta actually on January 18th, going 48 flat in that time. So nice little work over the Tapeta, at least, to get this horse acclimated to the conditions. Ignacio Correa IV knows how to get horses running first time in North America. Jose Ortiz is aboard. That's always a good combination. Those two win at a 23% clip over the last year. So there's a lot to like here. And remember, this is the same guy who's got Mufasa and Dadia in his barn, coming up from Latin America and winning big races on the dirt and on the turf. I don't think the distance is going to be an issue here. I think this one can get the job done. And I'm excited to see what she does in this particular race at a big price of 15-1. Well, let's go to the inside information stakes. And I'm going to play against Mystic Lake. And I say that with all due respect to C2 Stables, who just does amazing philanthropic work with Thoroughbred Aftercare. If you don't know about it, check it out on X. It's what they do there makes you a fan of C2 Stables. And you can count me as one of them. I'm a big fan of what they do. I'm a big fan of their horses as well. But I'm going to play against Mystic Lake here a little bit, who is second back from a little bit of a layoff. And part of it is she's a much better horse around one turn. And they tried her in the cotillion. I thought she ran a very respectable fourth that day to Torpedo Anna and Gunsong and Tarifa. So very good effort. But she's a better horse around one turn. And, I just don't know, though, who she's beaten necessarily. Socially Selective, My Main Squeeze, You Almost Had Me, Gervin's Princess. I mean, these are not overwhelming horses by any stretch. But she's racked up, some graded stakes victories, obviously, winning the Miss Preakness, winning the Charlestown Oaks. So she's gotten a lot of wins, and she won last time out in the Sugar Swirl. Very capable horse, but I'm going to try to beat her with Emery on the far outside for Brad Cox. Again, Tyler Gaffley on a board here. 3-1 on the morning line. And this horse just doesn't run bad races. It's just that simple. And outside of the Frizette over a sloppy sealed track, the two horses this horse has lost to, Ways and Means and Just FYI. That's it. That's the list. That's who this horse has lost to. Just FYI, as a 2-year-old in the Frizette and Ways and Means last year in the test. Otherwise this horse just wins. And this horse has good tactical speed. I think the outside post draw is beneficial. The distance is not going to be an issue at all. And this horse can track him down under a fast pace, under a slow pace. And I just think she's sitting on a really big effort. Like this one a lot. Hasn't run since October, coming in off a little bit of a freshening, admittedly, but I think is really sitting on a big effort for trainer Brad Cox, and one that I just think has a ton of talent and a lot of versatility, can sit a lot of different trips, can go straight to the front, but also can track the pace, can come from mid-pack. Depending on how things break at the start, Tyler has a lot of different options. He's ridden this horse a lot before, and she's just answered the bell so many times. I have a lot of respect for Emery as a racehorse. So that's going to be my top selection in this race. And then my value play is not much of a value play, admittedly, but it is the fourth choice on the board, which is Nick Style, a Bill Mott horse with junior aboard. This horse came back from a really long layoff and, won impressively. And then for Ralph Nix, and then went to Mott. And I remember being up at Saratoga, and this horse just absolutely ran them off their feet. in that N1X allowance up at Saratoga and beat a horse like Benedetta, who was very well thought of that day, comes back in the Gallant Bloom, loses to Ways and Means. Okay, so common lost partner to Emery in that regard, but lost to Ways and Means that day, but finished second, and then has come back and won 2 stakes races the last 2 times out and going 7 furlongs. This horse also has versatility, can go straight to the front, can track off the pace. I like that versatility a lot. I think Nick Style at 5-1 is outstanding value and a horse that if you're trying to beat Mystic Lake, I'm including in my horizontal late pick 5 wager. All right, well, let's go to race number 12, Pegasus World Cup Turf. Going a mile and an eighth, grade 1. And, you know, I'm playing against some horses again. I'm playing against Nation's Pride. Charlie Appleby and William Buick. I'm playing against them. You know, call me crazy. And you're probably screaming at your screen right now if you're still watching that I am crazy. But this horse is coming off a very poor effort in Bahrain, in the Bahrain International Trophy. Well, that said, the horse ran poorly at the Bahrain International Trophy last year, too. So, you know, maybe the horse just doesn't like the turf course there. So be it. The thing is, the horse came to North America and took really 3 starts to finally get that first win in the Arlington Million. And that was a 6-horse field. And I don't know how good that field really was outside of maybe the top 2, which I'll get to the other one in a second. But the horse finished 3rd in the Man of War, 2nd in the Manhattan, and has always felt, Acacia Clement pointed this out on our Snowbirds episode, which is up on the YouTube channel. He always felt like the lesser Appleby horse. And 2-1 is just a short price on a horse that I think there are questions about. I also have questions about integration. A horse I really like a lot. A horse that I find myself rooting for Shug McGahee, but a horse that just always seems to come up short in these big races. A couple of grade 2 wins, but has never been a grade 1 winner. Came up short to Nation's Pride in the aforementioned Arlington Million. Came up short in the Maker's Mark Mile, the Master of the Seas and Naval Power, in a rather short field that day as well. You know, does have the triple-digit buyer speed figure, so very capable in that regard. But 3-1 on a horse like Integration just feels like a little too short of a price. Therefore, I'm looking at a horse that's maybe peaking at the right time for Todd Pletcher with Irad Ortiz Jr. aboard, and that's number 6, Major Dude at 6-1. I think you're going to get an honest price on this horse. This horse is coming off of a local prep victory in the Fort Lauderdale and had a victory against Allowance Company before that back in October. Has won 3 of the last 4. The one time the horse didn't run well was over a good track in the 4-star Dave, where the horse was, didn't really get the best trip in terms of just being very headstrong at times and fading late. And I just think this horse at a mile and an eighth is a perfect 2 for 2, 2 for 3 winning, 3 for 3 in the exact at Gulfstream Park on the turf. And I think Irad gives this horse the right type of ride. I love Irad Ortiz Jr. on tracking horses. On horses that track, I think that is when he is at his absolute best. I don't love him on the lead a lot of times. And I don't necessarily love him as a deep closer, but man, you get him sitting, stalking, tracking trips. He's almost unbeatable, I think. He just gives such good rides, and he is so aggressive at knowing how to get to his spot on the track. So I think Major Dude just gets the right type of ride here and can sit the right type of trip, should be able to save some ground, maybe sitting in the 2-path early, and makes that run from mid-pack late. But I like this horse a lot at 6-1. Now, in terms of a value play, I'm going to go to an angle I usually don't play, which is a West Coast horse coming east, and that's Mi Hermano Ramon for trainer Mark Glatt with Luis Saez up on the mount. Part of it is I think this horse is also peaking at the right time. This horse has done nothing but improve since coming back from a lengthy layoff of over a year. Came back first time this year in August, and just listen to the buyer speed figures, 86, 97, 99, 100. It keeps getting faster every single time out. Last time out in the San Gabriel, finished second to Johannes. Johannes might very well be, and he is a finalist for your top turf horse of the year, but he might be the best or maybe the second best turf horse that we have in the United States. So he is an outstanding turf horse. And the fact that he finished second by less than a length to him, I think speaks very highly. This is a horse that beat redistricting and that Seabiscuit handicap 2-back. The mile and an eighth, I don't think will be an issue, especially now that we're 5th race back from that long layoff. The conditioning should not be a problem. The horse has been working out beautifully at Santa Anita before shipping. Luis Saez has ridden this horse before, rode this horse in that San Gabriel actually, and has some versatility to sit mid-pack or close from further back. But that inside trip should be able to save a lot of ground. Mi Hermano Ramon at 8-1, I think is an interesting play in this race, and a horse I'm going to take a nice long look at in terms of how I want to play this one. Well, let's close it out with the namesake. Let's give a shout out to the big purple horse out in front of Gulfstream Park. Because when you think horse racing, you think classy, folks. And when you think classy, you think giant purple horses. You think South Florida. These are all true statements. I love South Florida. I love the color purple. That's why I'm wearing it. I love purple horses. I say this all in love. But listen, Pegasus World Cup. We're going a mile and an eighth. Fascinating race. Fascinating race. I'm against locked. That's the big takeaway here. I'm against locked. I hate the outside post for him. I feel bad the horse drew that poorly, and he doesn't have the running style for it. Because if he was a speed horse, I would go, listen, he's going to gun it to the front. Johnny V in particular, he's just going to gun this horse to the front. He's going to cross and clear. He's going to save ground. He doesn't have that type of speed. I mean, Johnny's as good as there is about getting speed out of a horse, but he's just not that fast. He also isn't a deep closer. So he's not the type of horse that's going to break and just make a left-hand turn and get over to the rail and then make a big run late. He's a mid-pack horse. The problem is there's a lot of mid-pack horses in this race. I could envision locked being caught 3-4 wide around both turns. That's not ideal at Gulfstream Park. Where am I looking as a result? Looking at a horse that I'm a sucker for, admittedly, and that's Saudi Crown. Really like Saudi Crown a lot. 9-2 for Brad Cox with Laurent Drew aboard. If you get the best version of Saudi Crown, I think he wins this race the most number of times, given the post-position dynamics and the race dynamics. He is an exceptional horse when he is at his best. I think that Saudi Cup took a ton out of him. That was, if you remember, a massive third-place effort that he ran that day, did all the dirty work up on the front end, set insanely fast fractions. Nearly everyone else faded. I mean, National Treasure was even fading late in that race, who was up there on the front end, and everybody else was just gone. And it looked like he was going to win until Ushpa Tesoro and Senior Buscador tracked him down late and got those two finished first, second. Saudi Crown finished third. I never felt like he was the same horse after that. But, I talked to Acacia Clement, who was in Maidan for that Godolphin Mile, and she said he ran his race in the paddock, that he was very worked up, that he was just very, he had expended all of his energy early. And then he comes back to North America and runs in the RA Cowboy Jones, very soft spot to bring him back in, and wins that race, but maybe not as easily as you would have thought. And then they were going to point the horse to the ACAC at Churchill Downs, 1-turn mile, the prep for the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. But the horse, but they never entered the horse in the race. Why? Because there was a hurricane that was over top of Churchill Downs, and track conditions were so bad that Cox and the connections decided, no, we're not even going to run the horse there. So the horse goes straight from the RA Cowboy Jones to the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile, and just, again, doesn't even run a lick in that race, and starts to fade early and just ends up walking across the finish line, basically. But bounces back in a 2-turn test, wins the Tenacious Stakes, admittedly with Lasix, and gets the job done, runs a 103 buyer speed figure, and looked like his former dominant self. Now we're switching off Lasix. The horse has won off of Lasix before, so I'm not worried about that. And this is a horse that won the Pennsylvania Derby, nearly won the Jim Dandy, probably should have won the Jim Dandy that day. Forte probably should have been DQ'd, but that's another discussion for another day. And, listen, he's an impressive horse when he's on the right dynamics, and he should be inside controlling speed. I know some people think Mixto is going to go from the inside rail. Maybe. I don't have as much faith in Frankie Dettori on a dirt horse as I do, breaking from that inside rail as I might if Johnny V or if Irad Ortiz Jr. was on that inside rail. And Mixto, while a good horse, doesn't always get to the lead. So I think Saudi Crown just has better early speed and is going to be able to get out there on the front end. And then you tell me who's going to press him. Now, the horse that's most likely to press him is actually my value play, Skippy Longstocking from the far outside. Skippy presumably is going to have to break and cross and clear a whole bunch of horses. The question is whether he's going to be able to do that or not. And I think you can say you want to do that, but whether or not Tyler Gaffleon's able to get him to do that is another discussion. But I think Skippy at 10-1 presents interesting value. And I say value very intentionally here. I do not view Skippy as a win contender. I view Skippy as a horse to use underneath. Skippy in grade 1 competition is simply not up to snuff. This is a grade 2, grade 3 winning horse, and a really good one at that. 7 graded stakes victories. We need more horses like Skippy Longstocking that have run 28 races in his career. That helps replenish and keep the field strong for our older dirt division. But when he steps up to grade one company, he's just not quite there. That said, I think he sits the right type of trip. I think he tracks off the pace of Saudi Crown along with his stablemate, White Abarrio. I think White Abarrio sits a really nice trip here. I think White Abarrio is dangerous. I don't love him at 3-1. If White Abarrio was 5-1, I'd like him a lot more. He'd probably be my top pick at 5-1. 3-1, my concern with this horse is less so that he lost last time out. That was a bad trip, and he was running late, and he was hitting his best stride. He was going 7 furlongs. Now we're stretching back out to 2 turns. My concern is the first 2 races back in Saffie Joseph Jr.'s barn, the horse has been slow out of the gate. Listen, you're slow out of the gate here, the race could be lost right away. He loves Gulfstream Park, 6 of 8 in terms of victories down there. The distance could be a little bit of a question, only 2 for 7 at this 1.125 distance. But, White Abarrio, I think, is a dangerous runner in this race as well. But Saudi Crown's ultimately my top pick. I think a horse like Skippy Longstocking is going to be my value play. A horse like Stronghold, I was higher on early in the week. And I would just tell you to beware of Stronghold, who has been managed beautifully by Phil D'Amato, but has also managed to avoid the best horses in his division. Because he ran once against Nisos, and he got trounced. He then lost to Winstock in the Low South Futurity. He comes back to beat a lot of luck in the Sunland Derby, beats Imagination and EJ Won the Cup in the Santa Anita Derby, finishes admittedly a solid 7th, I think, in the Kentucky Derby, but then comes back and loses to Dragoon Guard in the Indiana Derby, finishes second to Seize the Gray in the Pennsylvania Derby while beating Dragoon Guard again, and then finishes second to Raging Torrent going at 1 turn in the Malibu. What names are not mentioned here? Fierceness, Dare Leone, the top horses, outside of Seize the Gray, you're not even getting Dornick in there, and he lost to Seize the Gray. So he's a horse that I just think has been managed beautifully, but I wonder if people bet him a little too much because they see the fact that 9 out of his 10 career starts, he's finished in the exacta. But I don't view him as a serious threat. I think a horse like Krupe could maybe come running late for Todd Pletcher at 15-1. But I really think this race is going to be controlled up front. Saudi Crown's the horse that I think is going to control it up front. I think they just go. Ray Pollock had a great stat. Since this race has become the Pegasus World Cup in 2017, the leader at the top of the stretch has won every single edition of the Pegasus World Cup. So keep that in mind. And I don't think it's been since 2012 a horse has won from off the pace at the top of the stretch. And I think at the top of the stretch, Saudi Crown's going to be in the lead. That's going to be my top pick for the day. All right. Well, listen, folks, thanks for tuning in. We got through 13 races in under an hour, an all-time record. People say I talk too much. All right. Listen, thank you so much for tuning in. Really appreciate it. Make sure to press that like and subscribe button today. Make sure to check out all of our great content on NYRA Bets YouTube as well as on the NYRA Bets app. We have a lot of great promotions you can opt into every day at tracks across the country and across the world. My name is Matthew DeSantis, wishing you a great and profitable day at the races and reminding you, friends, it's now post time.